Hello and welcome to orientation to field education. I'm Rosemary Andrews, field coordinator for the Kalamazoo office.
Hi everybody, I'm Vicki Polini. I'm the field coordinator up here in Grand Rapids.
And a part of our team is also Marion Triplett, the field director and field coordinator for the Benton Harbor campus. And we have a graduate assistant that is with our field team as well.
So our goal, you guys, is to give you as much quick, down and dirty information as we can about the field process through this video right now, but you're going to want to follow up with your coordinator from your site to make sure that you got all the details that you need for the successful application, matching, and confirmation process in field. Rosemary and I will bounce this back and forth and stay on top of the slides the best that we can to give you what you need for the moment. And we'll start with sort of a picture of what most field placements look like in terms of time and progression. The vast majority of our internships begin in the fall, at the beginning of the fall semester, and they go through 2 sequential semesters, usually fall and spring, and finish up in April. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some summer block opportunities and the occasional opportunity to do something that is an off-schedule start, like say a January to June, but the vast majority of our students are in field from fall to spring. And depending on whether this is your first of 2 internships, or if it's your second internship, that will tell you how many hours you put in total during the course of the placement. So if this is your very first internship and you have another one to go after this, that means that you're not coming from a BSW, you're not advanced standing. And so you'll start your internship sometime around the end of August, beginning of September, depending on that academic year. And you're going to average somewhere between 12 and 14 hours a week in field for a total of 400 hours. You'll have a midway semester break that we encourage you to take right around December, the end of December and into January, where you're not required to be at your internship. But again, you're going to want to talk to your supervisor in your internship placement and your field coordinator to be sure that you've got adequate coverage and a plan for what that break might look like. If this is your second of 2 internships, or if it's your only internship, meaning that you came from a BSW and you're advanced standing, then you're looking at 500 hours of field placement, again, starting in the fall, finishing up in the spring, and that tends to average more like 14 to 16 hours during the day, during the week for both foundation and education, guys. It's not too early to be talking to the people in your lives, the people you share your with, your job, not to be trying to accommodate daytime, weekday hours in field. There are some internships that offer evening and weekend opportunities, but exclusive night and weekend opportunities are very rare. It's not that there aren't places out there like hospitals, for example, that they're there 24 hours a day. It's not about them being there. It's about somebody who's qualified to supervise you being willing to do that after 5 and on weekends exclusively. So a tip for now is please begin making some accommodations to be able to do internship hours somewhere between 12 and 16 hours a week during the day, during the week, from September to April. This picture will show you that for the most part, onboarding is going to happen in that last month of August. That's going to be things like your organization maybe is going to want you to have a TB test or a background check. There may be an orientation session that you have to attend or review. And all of those things should be done before you get started in your internship. Remember that if there are onboarding requirements that cost out-of-pocket money, so an iChat, for example, that's not covered by the school. So when you're in your interview, that's one of the things you might want to ask is, do you have onboarding requirements and what are they? So that if there's going to be some cost that's incurred in that, we know it ahead of time. If you'll take a look at this here also, you'll see some things that probably don't make a lot of sense initially, like safety checklist and liaison visit 1, 2, and 3. Those are things that will make more sense once you get into your class. Remember that you'll be in a class along with those 12 to 16 hours a week of internship. The foundation classes tend to meet much more often than the concentration classes. Often in the fall, you could plan that you'd have class probably every other week. And then in the spring, maybe once a month is what that tends to look like. Your classroom professor will figure that out with you. But it's a safe bet to assume that you'd probably be every other week in the fall and at least once a month in the spring for your foundation placement. Concentration guys, you probably will be in class just a couple of times in that fall semester, and then maybe once or twice in spring. So your class meets much more often, but the emphasis is on your success in field, because this is your last opportunity to practice skills and develop who you're going to be professionally before you're out there in the workplace. The classes that you'll be in will register you for them once your placement's confirmed. So if you try to go in and register for your field class, you're going to get a restriction that won't let you do that. Don't panic. That's for us to take care of. And it's part of us trying to keep track of where you're at in the process, that we won't register you until we've got a confirmed placement. So those classes that go fall and spring semester, again, generally speaking, that's going to be the same instructor for both classes. That will be the person who will visit you either in person or virtually at the placement while you're there. That's the person who will be a link for your supervisor back to the school here. Ultimately, the person who will give you your grade. Half of your grade in either class, whether it's foundation or concentration, half of your grade is going to be what you do in the classroom. So academic assignments that'll be part of the syllabus. And the other half is going to be the success that you have in field. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. What pieces did I miss about that, Rosemary?
I think you hit just about all of our important points on what the differences are. And
I just thought of one. In the days of COVID, it might be that your classes, field classes or other for that matter, that those might be remote. They might be virtual. You'll hear a bunch of different words like synchronous or asynchronous or hybrid. Regardless of the format of that field class, your internship may be in a very different format. So it could be that your field class only meets remotely, but your internship is on site in person every day that you're there. So just because we have a particular structure going on based on COVID and safety for classes, for field doesn't necessarily mean that would be the same for your field placement itself.
Absolutely. So some of the first steps to get started on securing your field placement involve our intern placement tracking system, which we refer to as IPT. This is our web-based software that we use to monitor students who are involved in field. And this is a program that allows all of our stakeholders to be able to see information so that we're all on the same playing field when it comes to your field placement. So it is a web-based system, but it is a secure server. It's password protected. The only people that get access to the information are the field office and your current field instructor. So each person is assigned a specific role and specific permission. Instructor that's not at your site can't see your information, but your field instructor can. So to get you started in IPT, you will receive a link to log on. You will have a specific organizational name that we use, which is WMISH. IPT has many universities that use this system, and each one has a different organizational name and site that they use. So always make sure you use our link and our organization name, or you'll get an error message when you try to log in. The first time you log in, you will use a default username that is a letter number combination and a default password. The first time you log in, you'll be prompted to change those. Make sure you write them down. You're the only one who has access to those. If you do get locked out, you can call us to reset things back to your default, but we don't have access to what you change it to. Make sure to keep track of that. So the first time you log in, it's going to take you to your home page. This is what it's going to look like. Your name and the role you have are at the top. So here is a test student and their role is a student. On your left side is where you're going to see your forms. We'll talk about what those are shortly. And these are different tabs that you're going to use to access information, the student detail and the field organization list. So application requirements that are needed for us to get started are your student agreement form, which is located in your IPT account, and we'll talk about that. All of your demographics and emergency contact listed in IPT. A current photo is something that we also ask you to put in, especially in this remote time, so that we can kind of put a name with a face. An updated resume. There is a narrative statement that we ask for, a criminal history statement if applicable. If you're doing any specializations or certifications, there's a spot in that in IPT, but you also need to let us know that. There's a self-rating scale to fill out, information about your schedule, your transportation, any language barriers or additional languages that you might have, and then site preferences. I'm going to show you how we put all that in. So this is what your student detail page looks like. We're going to ask you to put in, of course, your current demographic information. An emergency contact is crucial because when you're at your field placement, and if something happens, this is where your field instructor is going to go to look up who to contact. So make sure that's updated. Your resume and narrative each have spots where they can be uploaded. Anywhere you see this little pencil and paper icon, you click that and it gives you the option to upload a document. We ask you to also fill in your Western identification number or your WIN number. This helps us if we need to assist you in registration or looking up your transcript. So please also fill that in. We ask for a picture. Like I said, during COVID, a lot of times we might not ever see you face to face. So having a picture to put with your name is always helpful. We ask that you keep it professional. It doesn't have to be like a professional headshot, but a nice selfie. No spring break pics. We don't want pictures of you with other people. We want to be able to tell exactly who you are. And your field instructor can see this as well. So definitely keep it appropriate. So the same way you upload your resume and narrative is how you upload the photo. You click the little pencil and paper icon. It will pull up a box to upload. You select the file that you want to put, and it uploads it right to IPT. It's pretty explanatory, but if you need help, certainly reach out to us and let us know. Vicki, do you want to talk about some resume tips and some of our resources for that?
Yep, you bet. So Rosemary mentioned the places that you're going to upload documents. Remember that the field office, your field office, whether it be Southwest, Kalamazoo, or Grand Rapids, that we're going to review those documents because that's what's going to go out as your field application to the people who are considering you for an internship placement. This is a pretty competitive process that other students from other universities, maybe even your own peers, may be competing for the same spot. So we want you to look as good on paper as you can, and that will help get you through the door so that you can then interview for that position. Some of the things that we tend to find with resumes is that students will upload an out resume that it doesn't have current information on it. So take a look at it and review it before you put in there if you're submitting a resume that's a little bit older. Some real common mistakes that we find is that people forget to put that they're Western students on there, believe it or not. So you're going to want to include in your education that you're working on your MSW and a projected graduation date. That's helpful for the reviewer to have a sense of how far into this degree are you, and ultimately, are you going to be eligible for hire at the end of this internship? So don't forget to put that you are working on your MSW degree with a projected graduation date. You're going to keep it MSW career related to the extent that you can. Many of you have already got experience out in the field at an undergraduate level. So you're going to want to highlight that first. While you may have work experience that's not related to the field, so you worked in retail, for example, for some number of years, I'm not suggesting keep that off, but I am suggesting think about maybe two different categories so that this resume is an MSW career resume. And so maybe consider categories like related experience, where you can include not only volunteer work, but internships and things that are related to the career of being an MSW. And then consider a second category, perhaps after that, that's work experience that speaks to your work ethic, say, for example, in retail, right? So keep that stuff on there, but think about how do you want your resume to pop and have that person reviewing it want to know more about you and be interested in taking a next step. One of the other things that we tend to find with students is that resumes end up looking like papers that just never got finished, so that the first full page is full and the second page has got maybe a few lines on it and that's it. There's no identifying name on it. There's just a few lines and a bunch of white space. So don't be afraid to be creative and to play around a little bit with your resume so that you've used some what we call information architecture, that it's not filled with a bunch of white space. That if you do have a second page, that there's something, whether that be a footer or even an additional copy paste of your demographics from the first page onto the second page. You don't want people who print them off wondering, is this the second page for you or somebody else, right? Also, at this point, many of you maybe have heard that you should only have a one-page resume. And I tend to disagree with that. At a master's level, you have enough experience that you probably have pretty decent, full, rich two-page resumes. So don't be afraid to make it a two-pager. Much more than that, and you might lose some interest. So if you have challenges with that, let us know so that we can help you with it. Also, as you save it, a good rule of thumb is if you haven't already done so, create two different ways that you can, and places that you can save your resume, because you're going to have a whole career of resume changes ahead of you. So think about saving it maybe in an email, create like a resume box, a folder where you can store it there, and then maybe on a thumb drive somewhere else. Always have a backup. You don't want it to die if your computer dies. You don't want it to be lost if it is in a thumb drive that gets wet or misplaced. So think about saving it in two different places and save it in two different ways, as a Word document and a PDF. The Word document, of course, allows you to make changes to it super easily, and a PDF allows you to send it so that whatever it is they're looking at is what they see when they review it and when the reviewer prints it off. You don't have to worry that somebody hits a wrong key or that some of the fonts get adjusted. A PDF is secure, and you have to be pretty nefarious and really want to mess with a PDF document. So think about saving it two different ways, two different places, and professionally labeled so that you'll easily be able to go back to it. Many of you are going to have people who report to you in the future. You're going to have a staff. You're going to have a student of your own who's going to say, what did your first resume look like? Or what did your MSW grad school resume look like? So if you label it clearly, you'll be able to pick it up really quickly and folks can see what it is you've done, and you can see how much progress you've made over the course of your career. We'll offer feedback about the resume and these other documents that we're going to talk about here in a second. You can also contact the Career Center and the Writing Center at Western for tips about resumes and how to present yourself in a way that gets you through the door. You guys also have a narrative statement. It's a little misleading in IPT because it says a cover letter. What it really is at the bottom of your profile, you'll see there's 10 questions, and they're questions about what do you want to do when you graduate? What do you want to do long-term in your career? What kinds of people do you want to work with? What kinds of people would you not care to work with? You do not have to write a cover letter, a dear sir or ma'am, or to whom it may concern. You don't have to do that because really that's going to be us in the field office. We in essence are your cover letter. We're asking organizations, would you be open to considering this fabulous intern to work at your organization and to learn from what you're doing? So even though it's a little misleading, really think about it in terms of a narrative and those 10 questions. And the easiest way to do that is to literally just copy and paste the 10 questions onto a document, do the question and then answer it, the question and then answer it. Most of the organizations that we work with are pretty accustomed to this sort of format, and that lets them skip real quickly to the questions that they want the answers to. So for example, you say you want to be a social worker, but in the section about who don't you want to work with, you say that you really don't want to work in a hospital, you really don't want to work with the elderly. Those things need to line up. So give some thought to each of those questions. Chances are pretty good that somewhere between 3 to 5 sentences is plenty. You don't have to write a novel, but you do want to give enough information that the people who are reviewing it can get a sense of where you're headed and whether they're a good match for you or not. Don't forget to put your name on the document and maybe a date, something general like spring 2021, so that they can get a sense of when it was that you wrote it. We also tend to find that organizations will pay a lot of attention to what sorts of improvements do you need to make? Where are your challenges in your professional growth? And they look at what sorts of folks do you want to work with and don't you want to work with? Those categories, those questions are pretty important to answer the best that you can. You'll see that we're suggesting focusing on 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7, but let us again review that narrative statement with you. And if we have ideas about how you could say something differently or what you can add, we'll definitely do that when we offer some feedback for you. And some of you will have a criminal background statement that you'll want to disclose. We tell students that if you have any doubt whatsoever that something will come up on a background check, you need to disclose it. Many sites will completely blackball you and not even consider offering you an opportunity if you don't disclose something and they find it. They can be a lot more thorough than you would think. And that's a discussion for another time about whether that's okay or not. But anything that even as a minor you think is record, consider talking to your field coordinator about that, whether it should be disclosed or not. And then what we ask for is just a brief statement about what it is that happened, some context about when it happened, what was going on, what contributed to the bad choices that you made, and what were the consequences for that. Not only formal, but informal. Super important in that is also about what you learned about yourself, how you got through that challenge, what waited for you on the other side of it, how it has molded who you are now, and of course, why it won't happen again, and that this organization can rest assured that you've learned from whatever those mistakes might have been. If you don't have a criminal history that you think would come up on a background check, then this isn't something that you have to worry about or do. And then you'll also see in IPT, there are a few other things for you to do, statistics, like things like the bus route If you are uncomfortable driving in the snow, if you are only available particular days or times, you'll want to include things like your work schedule. Rosemary mentioned earlier languages that you may speak, and then the self-rating scale. Sometimes students will get a bit caught up with that about how should I rate myself. I don't want to appear as if I know everything, but I have some areas of competence. There are other areas where I know nothing. The key to this is to be honest in your reflection about yourself and your skills. The only folks that are going to see this scale is going to be the field office and your supervisor once the placement is confirmed. So this is something that helps us to get an idea of where you feel like your competencies lie. And then hopefully it's food for thought and discussion in supervision once your placement is confirmed, and you and your supervisor can go through some of the things that you feel really good at and some of the things that you need more support and learning opportunities to get some more mastery over. Are there pieces about that I missed, Rosemary?
Again, I think you nailed it on almost everything. Just maybe to highlight that there are resources available. If you don't have a professional resume already started, the Writing Center and the Business College both have resources to help you get that started. Even your narrative, the Writing Center can help with assistance on that. So certainly there's WMU resources outside of the field office that can help with those things. So now you have all of your information in IPT, it's time to start thinking about where do you want to do your internship. So in IPT, there is a field organization list that you can access of all of our current and past agencies that we have listed and had students with before. So you can sort through those in a couple different ways. You can do a sort based upon the name, so ABC order. There is a spot where you can select location. So you could say like, I only want to be in Kent County. And you can also sort by BSW level or MSW level placements. So this can be super helpful for you to kind of narrow your search down a little bit. Maybe you're not familiar with the Kalamazoo area and don't know all the agencies that are available. This is a spot where you can look. Or maybe you have an agency in mind already or a contact there and you want to see if they're already in our system. So definitely take the opportunity to look through there. One thing we like is when we do our one-on-one meetings with you to have an idea of a few agencies that you're interested in. It just helps us kind of narrow down what you're looking for a little bit. I will say, while this list, we try to keep it updated as often as we can, things change quite frequently in our agencies. So an agency that took an MSW student last semester might not be open to an MSW student this semester. They might only want a BSW. Maybe the person who has normally done their supervision is no longer with the agency and they can't take interns anymore. Or like this year, we had a lot that didn't take interns due to COVID. So really use this just as a guide. Don't get your heart set on a specific agency listed here or specific activities that they have listed because it changes quite frequently. We also ask that when you're looking through these agencies and kind of determining what looks good to you, is to always go through the field office. Don't ever contact the agencies on your own. Some agencies really frown upon that and might not even consider you as a student if you contact them separately from the field office. They're very busy people and usually have very specific ways that they like interns to kind of come through their system. If you have a contact at an agency, you know, my aunt is a social worker at Oakview Medical Center. That's great, and you can certainly have conversations if you have a close contact about that. But we definitely ask, like, don't cold call. Don't call a friend of a friend of a friend and ask about internships. You can certainly filter that through to us of like, hey, here's a contact person that I've heard about here, and we'll try it that way. But again, no cold calling. And if there's something that you're interested in that you don't see listed in IPT, that does not mean it's not something we can pursue. There is a little bit of a process to getting a new agency started for our students that includes affiliation agreement and some legal documentation, so it can take some time. So if you're interested in an agency you don't see listed on here, the sooner you let us know about that, the better, so we can start that process.
I would add too that if IPT is the only way to identify organizations that you're interested in, you're going to be pretty frustrated that what's listed in IPT are only organizations that have had a student with us since we started using IPT. There's going to be a lot of places that are not listed, a lot of programs that you can't find. So don't use IPT as your sole filter for identifying what sorts of organizations you might be interested in. You can Google, you can talk to folks that you know, peers, even your professors. Use a variety of different ways to be thinking about what sort of field organization experience do you want to have. IPT is one tool to use. It is not the only one.
Absolutely. It's kind of a starting point to get your brain working on what you're interested in. So the next step is to go into your IPT account and take a look at your forms. So again, this is your main IPT homepage. You're looking for field organizations, you use this little tab. Your forms are over here in the left-hand side in the gray column. Once you click that, it's going to open up to a screen that looks like this second half down here. You should have 4 forms located in your IPT account: your learning contract, your student agreement, your time log, and your orientation and safety checklist. So one that we need kind of taken care of right away is your student agreement. So you'll click on View Student Agreement, and it will pull up this document. So this document must be signed before we can send your information to any of our agencies. It's a release that gives us permission to share your resume, your narrative, any information about you as a student. So make sure you sign that right away. This also talks about our liability insurance and what you're covered and when you're covered. Different things like transportation, and that accommodations for disabilities are listed here. So those are all things you need to review this document and sign as soon as you get access to your IPT account to log in. So again, this has just some like legal disclaimers in here. You're not covered by workers' comp because you're not employed by these agencies. You're covered by Western's Liability Insurance. We'll talk about how that works a little bit later when we talk about starting your field placement, but you are covered by Western's Liability Insurance when you're in field. Some agencies will require you to use your personal vehicle for transportation. So this also has a statement on here about having current auto insurance and who's responsible. So certainly read through that thoroughly and then sign that document. So that needs to be done, like I said, before we send any of your information out. So once we have your resume and narrative uploaded, ideas on your field placements that you're interested in, your student agreement signed, we're going to set a meeting with your field coordinator, a one-on-one meeting. This currently is being done via phone. If you wanted to do like a Zoom or a WebEx, we could arrange that as well. It takes between 15 and 30 minutes to just kind of go over your information, talk about placement ideas, options that are open to students right now. Like I said, with COVID, we have a lot of situations that either aren't open or look very different than their traditional internships do. So we ask you to come prepared with some ideas. If you have specific questions for us, be ready to take notes on different things that we talk about during those meetings. Each of us kind of have our own style when it comes to our one-on-one meetings. And we also, I want to take a moment to talk about how do you know who you meet with? So, as I mentioned, I'm the Kalamazoo field coordinator, Vicky's Grand Rapids, Marion does more Benton Harbor. But it's not unusual for a student that is listed in the Kalamazoo campus to still live in Grand Rapids. And so if you are interested in having your placement in Grand Rapids or down in Benton Harbor, or perhaps Lansing or Jackson or wherever it is that you happen to live, that's going to kind of determine which of us you meet with. We almost have like our little sales territory, just because we can really focus on the placements and agencies and really cultivate relationships based on our geographic location. So if you are thinking about a placement south of Kalamazoo, like south and west of Kalamazoo, that would be more Marion Triplet. If you're thinking more north of Kalamazoo, that would be Vicki Polini. She generally kind of handles the Lansing area as well. And then if you're kind of outside of those three specific networks, talk to like wherever you're a registered student. So say you're living in Detroit and you're listed as a Kalamazoo student, we'll go ahead and talk about that and make those arrangements. Certainly we have options available in different parts of Michigan. We even have nationwide, and in the past we've had international placements. So just have those conversations with your field instructor.
Oh, so this one's me, Rosemary, right?
Yeah, if you want to talk us through interview tips, that'd be awesome.
Yes. Okay. So remember where we saw the map of time in the beginning, and we saw that internships are basically September to April. It probably feels pretty strange that we're starting so early, but interviews can happen really anytime beginning in March all the way up through August. So we want to prep as much as we can, as early as we can, to get this process going. We're going to talk in a minute about how the matching and confirming of internships, what those timelines look like. But just keep a general idea in mind that from the time that your application is due, February 1st, until you begin your internship around the first or second week of September, there's going to be a lot of back and forth between you as a student and us in the field offices. And will help prep all along the way, as long as you can keep us updated about what's going on. One of the pieces that sometimes falls apart is that students will get offered an interview and they forget to let us know. There's a lot of things that we can do to help your success in that interview if you let us know when it's scheduled for. We can sometimes let you know how many other students are looking at that same spot, how many spots are available, what sorts of questions does the organization usually ask. Will it be an individual interview or a group interview? Are there multiple steps where you maybe meet with the supervisor first and you have to meet with somebody from HR? So keep us updated about how the process is unfolding, and we'll do the same. When you do get to the point where you've been offered an interview, remember that at this point it could be in person or it could be a remote virtual Zoom sort of meeting. So you'll want to confirm that with the person who contacts you. They're going to contact you directly. We try to avoid being the middleman of scheduling when you'll have an interview. We'll do the reach out and then encourage them to take a next step with you. So when you get that call for the interview, let us know. And these are some of the things that we're going to suggest, is that, of course, you want to make sure that you're dressing appropriately, especially at least from the waist up. If it's a virtual interview, try to be in a place, if it's virtual, that you're not really going to be interrupted. And remember that they already have this job. So even if you think that they are pretty casual, you do not want to be, because you're interviewing and they're not. You might think about doing some research on the organization, the professionals themselves. Do a little bit of trolling, maybe even checking out Facebook. Look at social media to see what kinds of things you can find out and be prepped for questions along those lines. They're probably going to ask you right away, what do you know about our program? What do you know about our reputation? You want to know that right off the bat. Try not to hem and haw when they ask you about your schedule. They don't want to know, well, on Mondays I do this and Monday afternoons I do that. They want to know, when can they rely on you? So have that already in front of you, in writing even. Be prepared for questions that they might ask you, including traditional interview questions like, what are your greatest strengths and challenges? Tell us about a time where you had someone who was unhappy with your work, or a difficult conversation you had to have with a coworker. So think about some of those traditional questions that might be asked, and have some prepared questions of your own, whether they be specific questions about what sorts of things would I do here and what would my schedule look like, to what have other interns done before. If nothing else, ask them, what did they like about their job and why do they stay there, so that you can get a sense from them about what the experience is like for them. Don't be afraid to take notes. Don't be afraid to refer to your notes. Even in a virtual session, sometimes it's hard to see, like you guys can't tell that I've got papers in front of me. So you can say, let me take a moment and look at my notes and be sure that I've asked everything and that I've written down all the things that I need to know. So don't be afraid to have paper in front of you. You might consider having copies of your resume, even though they're going to have gotten that from us. Have copies of those if it's an in-person. Think about papers that you're proud of, or documentation that you've done in the past. Be careful about HIPAA and confidentiality, but you might think about bringing something like that either to the interview or submitting it before the interview, so that you can set yourself apart from the rest of the pack that might be trying to vie for the same position. They are not going to have a reference sheet from us, so you might also think about providing them a copy of your professional references. You could forward that ahead of time before the interview in an email, or if you're going to meet them in person, you could take it and provide it for them while you're there. One of the other cool things that potential supervisors tend to appreciate is knowing your academic calendar and the classes that you've taken. So you might consider pulling up your transcript, making some copies of that and sending it. And even the academic calendar, we already know when classes start in the fall. We know when spring break 2022 is. So you might think about offering that as well, because if they have students from other schools that they're considering, they're trying to figure out how does all that fit with their workloads. That will set you apart. And remember that as you're closing up the interview, if you're not clear, if they're offering you the spot, don't hesitate to ask and say something very specific and direct, like, what happens now? Let them tell you, we'd love to have you talk as a team. We'll follow up with Mary and Vicky or Rosemary. Have a sense of what happens after this. You don't want to wonder, did you get it or did you not get it? If they offer it on the spot and you want to take it, you can accept it right there. If they offer it and you think, I'm not sure, then you, just like in a job interview, can say, I'm really appreciative of your time and so excited about the opportunity. Let me talk to my family about it, or let me circle back to the field office and get back with you within a particular period of time, usually a few days or so. So you don't have to feel pressured to take it. That said, we work pretty hard to do a good match from the get-go, and it's not often that students aren't a good fit. So on the one hand, be discerning about the opportunity for yourself, but on the other hand, know that we've got your back and we're trying to make sure we're doing a really a good vetting from the get-go. And then finally, don't forget to send a thank you email as soon as you can after the interview, even if you offered it and you've accepted it. It's always good to get in the habit of thanking someone for their time. And you can copy us on it, whoever your field coordinator is, because then we can track what's going on. And if we're not sure whether you've been an opportunity, that allows us to circle back and say, how do you think that it went? Are you in a position to offer an internship opportunity, or should we look at other potential sites? In the beginning of the matching process, we try to only do one organization at a time. We don't want to waste anybody's time, yours or a bunch of organizations. So we'll be pretty strategic of doing one at a time, and we want a clear answer, yes or no, before we move on to a next step. There's a placement process that we'll go through and a timeline that Rosemary, click us into that. This picture may also help. You already know the applications in IPT are due February 1st. We try to take that month of February to do as thorough a job as we can of assessing who wants to go into field, where would they like to go, what are their strengths, along with which organizations are asking us for students. And so that all starts happening after your applications go in on February 1st. And then the first matching and querying to organizations about their availability, we start that beginning in March. And then March, April, May, June, July, August is when we're going to bounce back and forth between asking organizations if they're up for considering you, you getting set for an interview, having the interview, getting and or accepting the offer, or going to plan B, C, D, E, and so on until we get you a confirmation. We want you on time start. We don't want any delays in this process. So again, that takes us back to that one-on-one interview that you'll have with the field coordinator about why you want to be thinking big picture and thinking about experiences and opportunities, not real small pinpoint, very specific options, right? One of the things that we are doing a little bit different this year is that we'll keep asking you, where's your application? If it's not in there on February 1st, we'll email you. At some point, it's likely we will even call or text to say, your application's not in IPT, where is it? By May 1st, if we don't have it in there, there's a very good chance that you'll be delayed for your internship and that we'll actually look at moving you into the next cohort, which will significantly impact graduation. So you want to get that application in, or be absolutely certain you're communicating with us about why it's not in there so that we're clear about how to move forward and support you. With any luck and grace, we'll have you confirmed in your internship so that all we've got to worry about in the month of August is onboarding. There'll probably still be some students that we're working on in August to get confirmed. That's okay. We will stay on it with you in the whole process. And usually mid-August-ish, we'll have what we call a field kickoff, which is where we'll do something similar to what we're doing right now and cover as last questions and concerns that you might have before you get started on your internship then in September.
And some students who are currently watching this maybe were admitted to the program later than these due dates that we have listed. You will have separate dates that will be communicating with you when we receive your information that you are admitted to Western. So if you're admitted in March, don't freak out that you missed the February 1st due date. But for students who maybe this is your second placement, or you've been admitted to the program for the last 6 months or so, or you're in the extended study, so this is your second year, these due dates are pretty solid. So your placement is confirmed. Now what? So your placement's confirmed, you're all set, but the placement doesn't start until September. So some things you can do in the meantime. are begin reviewing your learning contract. Your learning contract is in your IPT account, so you can look at what all the specific competencies are. We have sample learning contracts listed on our website where you can look at different activities that students have used in the past and familiarize yourself with that. Definitely explore your agency's website. Really get your familiarity with the organization up and running. Learn as much as you can. If you wanted to even email your field instructor and say, hey, I know I'm not starting my placement until September, but is there any recommended reading or something I can do over the summer to prepare myself? Make sure you watch for emails from your field instructor. We would hate to see a placement that got confirmed in March kind of get off to a rough start because maybe your field instructor was emailing you information over the summer and you weren't responding. So definitely check your email, look for some of those specific emails. Watch for emails from your faculty liaison. That's the person that's going to teach your course. They might also send you emails prior to the fall semester starting. Again, we will register you for that field course. Typically what we do is we wait until your field placement is fully confirmed before we put you in the course for a couple of reasons. One, that helps us know where you're at in the process and officially have a placement. And also we do sometimes try to place our students who are in the same agency with the same course instructor. So we're very intentional with how we do that. Most importantly, watch for emails from our field office. In the next few weeks, we are going to be sending you lots of emails. And then again, closer to the start of the fall semester, you're going to get lots of information about our kickoff, about maybe changes that have happened, all sorts of stuff. So watching your email, checking your junk folder for our email, please do that. Take an opportunity to look at Western's Safe Return Plan. This speaks to COVID and different precautions you can take. It's updated periodically, so keep an eye on that. Most importantly, do not start your field placement until the beginning of fall semester. So this brings us back to the topic of liability insurance. Western does have liability insurance that covers our interns. However, it is only effective when you are in the course. So if you have the opportunity to start your field placement in August, you cannot use that to count towards your hours. You are not covered by Western's liability insurance until the very first day of fall semester. So the very first day of fall semester is when you can start counting your hours and working at your internship. Anything that's done outside of that semester would be considered just straight volunteer work, not affiliated with Western, and it cannot be included in your time log or your learning contract. So this is the point where we're going to welcome students who are working on their second placement to join us. A few COVID updates for field. So this current year of 2020 and spring 21, there were some specific COVID allowances in place for field placements. That hasn't fully been determined for the next semester update of fall 21 and spring 22. So we want you to just keep your eye out for information on that. We still expect all students in field to follow state and federal guidelines on the use of PPE and if you're in person or remote. Also, you're going to follow the directives of your specific field organization. Every organization has different policies and protocols. And just keep watching for updates as the fall 21 semester approaches for more COVID information. Vicki, do you want to talk us through some of our specialty placements and concentration information?
Yep, sure thing. You guys that are in your second of two placements or your only internship. You are what we call a concentration placement, so that wording sometimes can be a little confusing. But essentially, second of two or only is a concentration placement. And it offers us the opportunity to be more specific about your interests and what those internship opportunities could be. So for example, folks who are in clinical or with individuals, families, groups, we have several different opportunities that we could think about of concentration. Um, what's the word I'm looking for, Rosemary? Specialties, maybe. And folks that are more interested in groups, organizations, community policy, evaluation, supervision, management, that's going to be more of a what we call PP&A internship. You guys already know that this internship is 500 hours across the 2 semesters, again, usually fall to spring. You're going to be in seminar for this, you'll be in field class, in other words, during the course of the internship, but it meets a lot less often than a foundation internship. Often you'll only be in class twice in the fall semester and once or twice in the spring semester. We'll register you for that class for each of those semesters. And keep in mind that it's the same professor who is also your liaison, but this is the person who ultimately gives you your grade, which is not going to be a letter grade this time. Concentration placements are credit, no credit. So you're either doing the work and doing it well and ready to move on, or there are some concerns. So the expectations in this internship are much higher and much more intense than they are in that first foundation placement, if you had one. The specialty certificates and options that I mentioned really briefly, one of the real popular ones up here in Grand Rapids is an employment-based. Many students will ask, can I do my intern work? And the answer to that is maybe. That's something that you want to talk about in a discussion with your field coordinator at whichever site you're at, talking about whether that could be an opportunity or not. During this next academic year, we are super fortunate that we may have the opportunity to allow students to count their true job, their employment, also as their internship, but there are some pretty tight restrictions on that, and we'd have to really process it through, make sure everybody's on the same page, and do everything that we can to support the learning so that it doesn't feel like you're paying credit hours to go to work every day. But the simple answer to, can I do my internship where I work, is maybe, and let's explore that together. Block placements traditionally are for students that are going to be doing an internship more often than not over the summer, for example. In the past, it was students that were going to be doing internships out of the area, out of the country even. But we have a variety of new opportunities that come to us now about block placements. So if you are interested in doing your internship over the summer, then let us know right away so that we can take a look at that. A block placement is still 2 semesters long and still either 400 or 500 hours long, but a block placement, of course, is going to be done in about half the time of a traditional internship. TFCBT and Trauma Across the Lifespan are incredible programs that we can work with you to explore for a concentration placement. Trauma Across the Lifespan deals with all kinds of different traumas and across the lifespan, so cradle to grave, and is much more varied in those kinds of opportunities than TFCBT. TFCBT is a particular approach to supporting and clinically intervening with trauma. It is specifically for kids. And both of these programs will have information sessions about them. TFCBT itself has a screening process that we need to do with Dr. Van Duzen. So if you're headed in either one of those directions, you're going to want to reach out to us as a field coordinator to make sure that we know that, and Dr. Van Duzen at the same time to be sure that academically you're on track with the electives that support that specialty, along with the internship that we'll do in that concentration placement. SPADA is our addictions certificate. Holistic health and school social work are also awesome, very specific opportunities for internships that if there are things that you're interested in, let us know so that we can support what that exploration process is going to look like and ultimately ensure that the match will fit with the specialty certificate that you're headed towards.
So if this is your second placement, you're already familiar with IPT and know how our system works. You're going to have an additional tab added to your account for your concentration information. So in your student detail page, it's going to list your name, and here where it says account, this is going to be a drop-down menu for you to select which year working on, foundation or concentration. So we're going to want you to go ahead and select the concentration tab to put your information into a concentration IPT account. So while these accounts are linked together, they are separate. You'll have all new forms. You'll have to put in your demographic information again. It's all kind of new.
Can I add something about that?
Absolutely.
I'm finding this year, guys, that my second year students, so students that are finishing up a foundation placement, they're actually going in and accidentally covering up their foundation application because they didn't do that drop down tab. So a good rule of thumb is if you log into IPT, your second field application, if you're covering up one, then that's not the right tab. And you want to switch over to what will look like a brand new, basically blank IPT application page.
Absolutely. It will have like just your name and your email will be the only information. So good point. Thank you, Vicki. All of this IPT information must be updated in that concentration tab. Don't come to our meeting and say, oh, well, you know, my demographics are in my foundation tab. Nope, we need it in your concentration tab because when we pair you with your field instructor for your concentration placement, they can't see your foundation tab. So you still need to make sure you update all of that. Timelines. So we are going to have a pretty strict May 1st cutoff for working on fall 2021 placements. So if you're kind of procrastinating that I'm just wrapping up my foundation placement, I don't have time to work on my concentration tab yet, I haven't updated my resume yet. We had a February 1st due date for all of your IPT information, and we're going to keep prompting you to get this information to us. As we're recording this, I will say it's after February 1st, and I still have a lot of students that haven't turned in their IPT or told me that their IPT information is ready. I'm going to keep hounding you, but when we get to May 1st, there's a good chance that this will start to delay your graduation. We'll move you to the next cohort, which is generally a full year later. So please get those in promptly. This placement requires 500 hours, so 100 hours more than last placement. The COVID allowances that you had for your foundation placement may not be available this year. So don't count on hour reductions and quite as much flexibility. We'll communicate more when we get closer to the start of fall semester about that. And just keep in mind, you know, this is your final learning opportunity as you're leaving the program, and our expectations are higher for your application process and for your time in field. Your field instructors are expecting, you know, a master's level student at the end of their education, and they're going to be expecting high quality performance from you in your placement. If you're thinking that maybe you'll just take your foundation placement and continue doing that to count for your concentration placement, we need to have a conversation about that. There is a process that's involved with what we call continuation placement. There is a proposal form that needs to be filled out, and we need to identify that you'll have a different field instructor, that your job duties will be very different. The whole point of 2 placements is to have different learning experiences and get different knowledge. So we'll need to address that. And even if you plan on doing a continuation placement, we still need you to do your IPT account. So the steps to securing a field placement are much like they were for you last year. You'll fill out the application. Apps were due February 1st. We will review, make edits. Then we'll schedule our one-on-one to talk about what organizations you're interested in, what possibilities there are. We'll send out those applications. Generally sometime in March, we'll start sending out applications to the sites that you're interested in. And you'll go through the interview process, keeping us in the loop all the way along so that we know where you're at in the process. Students can be interviewing for a placement all the way up until August. We'll get you confirmed in your field placement, make sure you know what background checks and information might be required before you start, get you registered for your field course. We'll plan on having a kickoff to field sometime in August, where we'll give the most up-to-date information on any COVID allowances or restrictions, any changes that might be coming down the pipe for your concentration placement, and really just kind of celebrate that you're at this final step in your education. Again, we're going to talk about that May 1st due date. If your IPT application is not done by May 1st, you most likely will be moved to next year's cohort, delaying your graduation up to a full year. So please don't procrastinate on getting your application done. So we have lots of resources. The field website is a great resource to get up-to-date information, information about your instructors, information from the university in general. So make sure you go to the School of Social Work page, and then you can specifically check out the field section. If you have questions about your placement, there's a field manual that gives all of the specific policies related to field. There are sample learning contracts, sample narrative statements, sample resumes, all sorts of information there for you to look at. In IPT, there is a help section if you're stuck in IPT, or you can always contact our office. And if you haven't already, like our Facebook page, our social media team does a great job getting information out, including job postings, grant information, all sorts of great opportunities for you. Vicki, do you have anything to add as we're kind of wrapping up?
Boy, not a thing that I can think of right now, Rosemary. I think we did a great job for not having done this before.
Yes. So thank you for all of you who have stuck it through and watched until the end. For sure, reach out to whoever your field coordinator is if you have questions or concerns. And we are looking forward to a fabulous year in field.
Happy fielding, everybody.